Ward is a singer-songwriter from South Australia who last year released the album If I Was in Dallas Tonight, which was the follow-up to his 2019 album Heartland. He has a new single out from that album called Too Drunk to Two-Step. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Sophie. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm wondering how often it has been that you have been too drunk to two-step.
I might need a few drinks to start two-stepping, and sometimes it gets that way. So I think I wrote the song late one night with a friend. I started to write the song late one night with a friend. So a little bit of truth in it.
Well, of course, Becky Cole has a song called Men Don't Dance. So perhaps you're proving her right.
No, I can two-step a little bit. I certainly learned that whilst in the US for a little while. I'm certainly not the best two-stepper, but I've got the fundamentals. And apparently if you do it Dallas style, it's very, very slow and simple anyway. So I like that.
Okay, so there are different styles of two-stepping. I am learning things.
Absolutely, there is, yeah. So it's all in the... I guess it's all in the culture of the different parts of the South, I guess. So, and Dallas, the old farm hands were very, very steady. So I think that's the way it goes. So,
so what was the inspiration behind the song, apart from, the two-step itself?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a fun song. I think it was late one night where I got the first inspiration and wrote the first parts of the chorus. And then when I started mucking around with it, I just pictured an old timer in a bar in either the US or in Australia, and watching all these kids come through and playing country music or taking over the bar. And I just imagined him or her sitting there still just observing the others and just a bit of a reminder to, always respect those that have come before you and the old timers in country music and the like. So it's a bit tongue in cheek, just a bit of fun, and also a bit of a story behind it, if you can imagine it.
Yeah. Do you often imagine characters when you're writing songs? Because obviously with this one, it's not from your direct experience, you've used your imagination.
Yeah, it definitely bit of everything. So quite often they start from my own inspiration, like Too Drunk to Two-Step, and then I start to imagine other characters as part of that. There's some songs that have been inspired purely by other characters, some songs inspired by family events and putting my feet in the shoes of other people, and sometimes, definitely from myself. So, and the way I write music is also a bit of a combo of everything. Sometimes it's chords first, sometimes it's melody first, sometimes it's the lyrics first. So I do come from a lot of different angles.
So when you first started songwriting, was it, I suppose it's natural it would be to express your own experience because that's how a lot of art starts. But as you went on, did you find that, I suppose it was an amalgam of all those things, as you said, but did you have a method when you first started writing songwriting?
The method when I first started, so you're absolutely right. It started from a cathartic experience to do with life issues, and then I just continued to write. And I was a lot of travel actually, and dare I say, not to reveal my age, but lots of travel potentially without a phone back in the day. And
Good God, those old days.
That's right. So I actually had a lot of writing done sitting at bars and sitting in cafes, not scrolling Instagram. And some of the music some of the lyrics, my apologies, I still draw from. So the first method was writing and a cathartic experience. And then as my experience started to grow, so did my, the diversity of how I wrote songs.
And have you found that by putting yourself in other people's shoes or other characters' stories as you're writing, that is a way for you to try to understand the human experience, for lack of a better term?
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm not sure if you can hear a dog next door. That's not my dog.
It doesn't matter if it is. Dogs are always good.
Yeah, that's right. It's my neighbour's dog. Absolutely. I think in my life with my family, through work outside of music as well, always important to put yourself in the shoes of other people and to write music that people can connect with, I guess, to help them with their life experiences and to provide an avenue to process their own life and thoughts and the like. So, sometimes it's myself and sometimes certainly thinking about other people when I write. So, it's diverse.
Have you ever had someone come up to you and swear that the song is about them?
Yes, I have. I can't remember which song it was. My apologies, but I've definitely had that. And I'm like, sorry, it wasn't. And they said, oh well, it makes me feel like X, Y, and Z. So certainly get that, and hopefully it wasn't too awkward. I can't remember.
But that'd be really gratifying for you as well, I would think, to know that it's resonated with them enough that they feel like it's their story.
Yeah, that's very true. And I've had people say, that reminds me of X, Y, and Z, or that reminds me of a certain person. So, and I think that's increased over time. So starting to, I guess, as your songwriting matures, I think you start to get better at writing stories that are timeless and also objective with regard to, who it could be referring to. So I think that's part of maturing as a songwriter as well.
And partly also part of your job as a country music artist, which is to make that connection through stories. And I think what's lovely about the genre is that the audience does feel like they can come up and chat to you and say things like that.
Yeah, it's a very personal genre, and I get lots of personal message from fans, and I feel like I can connect with them straight away, and I think they really like that as well. And I think there was somebody who was behind some of the series of ABC of Australian country music was talking about country music being about the story of the road, the heart, and the country itself. And that's always stuck with me, that bringing those three things together. Well,
there's a dog chorus going on. Love it. But coming back to Too Drunk to Two-Step, you have Bonnie Montgomery singing on the track as she does on Old Ground, which is another single from the album. How did that connection come about?
Yeah, that was in Austin. Funnily enough, it was at the Continental Club, and we were seeing James McMurtry play. And James McMurtry, an incredible American songwriter, probably the best songwriter in the world. And we were two-stepping actually, and we were dancing, and we had a drink afterwards, and started chatting. And Bonnie had actually spent time in South Australia and Australia, and got to know her, and that she was a singer-songwriter in her own right, and actually an opera singer, and had written an opera, and she still does a whole range of art. She's an incredible artist. And it was 2017, and the next night she was playing at the White Horse in Austin, and her guitar broke. And she was about to go to West Texas, where I was going in a couple of months' time, and I lent her my guitar, and I think she thought that was some Australian generosity, and so we've remained friends ever since. And where I recorded the album, a place called Wimberley in Texas at Yellow Dog Studios, she was living just close by as well, and made the connection. So that's part of that small community, very generous community of country music.
Now, just to backtrack, you mentioned James McMurtry and said he's perhaps the greatest songwriter ever. That is a massive call. So you're going to have to justify that, Matt.
Okay, no problem. He is somebody who is exemplary at telling common stories about other people and making you feel like you're in their shoes. His dad was Larry McMurtry, the author of part of that trilogy that wrote Lonesome Dove, I think. So, and the others, I can't remember them off the top of my head. So as a lyricist and storyteller and songwriter, he's definitely up there as one of the greatest songwriters ever, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll believe you, and may now seek out his songs.
He does have an album that came out last year that many rated the best album of last year, and it's an incredible album. Check it out.
Okay. Now, your album, If I Was in Dallas Tonight, I think my impression is it has songs that have serious intentions, but you also have a light touch in delivering those intentions. Do you consciously strive for that balance?
No, not necessarily. I think they came out that way. I remember your first review, and several reviews at the time commenting on the light touch nature of them, particularly I think the back half of the album, and reflecting, it's like, oh yeah, I guess they do. So no. So sometimes I like to write a meaningful song and for it to hit right in the heart. And I think because it had some of the I tried to go for a little bit more of the classic country feel in some of the songs, and I think that lightened the mood on some of them as well. But certainly there's one song, I Didn't Write a Song About You, which had very serious background to it in terms of a part of my life, and that was definitely a bit of a lighthearted tongue-in-cheek jab at a couple of people, but that's okay.
that was one of the songs I was thinking of, because there's some serious story in that song, and the way you deliver it, of course, it's open to the listener's interpretation as to whether everything actually did happen.
Yeah, no, not everything happened. It was one of those list songs where you start to think. You start to list off things that you do when you break up with somebody, but. I enjoyed. Excuse me, I enjoyed writing that song.
Yeah, it is a great song. And by light touch, I also meant that it's that really interesting thing that can happen with songwriters where there is a lot in the song. There's many layers in the song. There's quite a lot of emotion. There's meaning. There's story. But the light touch is almost like the Mary Poppins thing of a spoonful of sugar helping the medicine go down, so that the listener can really take on board what they want and learn from it. Perhaps learn through repeated listening. But it's entertainment, and it's meaningful entertainment.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's good to hear, and I'm glad it went down that way. Put it that way.
So another song that has a light touch, but also I think another meaning is Bondi's No Place for a Cowboy. But I'm presuming you came to this conclusion via personal experience.
I was during COVID. Going back and forth between Bondi to see a friend, trying the relationship during COVID and interstate and lockdowns and the like. And when having come back from Bondi, I think it was 2020, and it was when quarantine was a thing, and I was in 2 weeks quarantine in South Australia, and another one where not full truth in it, because I love Bondi and I love my experience there, but I just then imagined Bondi's no place for a cowboy, and then I imagined a cowboy on the beach of Bondi, and that started to grow in my mind as well. So that had a bit of fun to it as well. And unfortunately, never made the film clip. So we had plans to start making the film clip for that one with my manager and some other people at the time. And we had some good imagery in our head in terms of a dressed up cowboy on the beach, and a little bit Alan Jackson, Chattahoochee type style, but maybe with some surfboards and some surf lifesavers. So I might go back and record that music video one day, because it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, now that you've described it like that, I do want you to make that video. So now the title track is If I Was in Dallas Tonight, and obviously that's the name of the album, and there are quite a lot of American places and spaces on this album. Now, you mentioned recording it in the United States. Did you actually write quite a few of the songs while you were there?
Yes. So some of the lyrics I did, and then came home and wrote some of the music as well. So a bit of a combination. There was actually a couple of songs on there that I drew from travel in America, but not recent travel. So as far back as 2014, 2015. So the opening track and the final track, Lost and Found and American Road, that bookends the album, they're quite different. And you can probably hear that compared to the rest of them. So they have quite a cinematic, ethereal feel to them. And I thought that was a really nice way to bookend the album. And the whole album is about my travels to and from America and Australia over that time, from 2014 through to more recent times. And some of them definitely written on planes on the way home, and some whilst I was back here as well.
Now, you mentioned American Road, and that is your most recent single from the album, and it is a really epic closing track. When you were writing it, or even just thinking about it, did you perceive of it as an epic track?
Yeah, I just came out that way, to be honest. So it was, I can, like Lost and Found, I can imagine Open Road, sort of David Lynch type movies, and the simple chord structure, and it just evolved that way. And it's funny, when I let myself go a little bit more, I quite often go into that realm of, when you let go of 3 minutes 30, or, is this going to be radio friendly, et cetera, I certainly start to go down that more experimental type route, which I really, really like. And it just flowed that way.
Yeah, right. Well, it works extremely well, but it also makes you want to just go back to the start again, because it's like, well, I've been on this journey and now I think I need to go on it again. So there you go.
That's fantastic.
It has a few purposes. I've completely forgotten the question I was going to ask you about. I'm going to have to look over at my questions. Okay. What did you grow up listening to? Was it country music?
I grew up with Australian rock, essentially. So, the first album I remember listening to was Icehouse. I had 3 older sisters, and I was a I was a little tacker, and they were listening to music and buying records and the like at the time. So Ice House, Hoodoo Gurus. My first concert ever as an underage ager was Hoodoo Gurus, which was an incredible experience. And then I started to, as many people did in the 90s, venture into grunge. And then a couple of friends started getting into artists such as Whiskey Town and Ryan Adams at the time, and that then led me to country as well. So certainly didn't start listening to country music. My parents were opera and classical music fans, and Sunday mornings were the worst because I'd always wake up to opera. So, and listen, I appreciate opera, but not at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. So.
Was that to wake you all up? Was that the reason for it so early?
I'm not sure if they'll watch this or not, but I think, Dad was waking up to work, and he worked very hard all his life, still does, and he was getting up on a Sunday morning to start working as well. And I think he was like, right, everyone else can start working as well. So
it was motivational, obviously.
Yes, that's right.
So when did you start? We talked about your songwriting life, but when did you actually start playing an instrument and start singing?
I played piano at school, and I sang in a choir at school. So that was quite early on. And then I did a lot of study in my 20s, and then I picked up the guitar sort of late 20s, early 30s, and started writing songs then. So I took a sort of hiatus from music for about 15 years, I'd say. And then, picked up the guitar, started writing songs based on some personal experience. And I think the country, at the time, I was spending a lot of time in remote South Australia, and that whole thing about the road, the heart, and the country sort of came together at the right time. And plus, I'm no savant when it comes to the guitar. So the 3 chords in the truth thing, maybe let's say 6 or 7 or 8 chords in the truth sort of suits me just fine.
Well, I think it suits the audience as well. You need to deliver the message in a straightforward way. If things get too tricky,
exactly right.
Lost. Now, you mentioned being in remote South Australia, and your work is in land and wildlife management. Right. It has been for quite a long time. How did you get into that?
It's a very good question. I started working in a hospital when I was quite young when I left school, and taking x-rays, and I did that for a year. And I think I had a good mate at the time who we used to go surfing, and he was like, do something else, don't do this rest of your life. And I'm like, yeah, good idea. And so I went back and I studied science, and one thing led to another. And sorry, my dog's still barking. And I took a trip to the remote APY lands in South Australia, the Unanul-Ginjari lands, as a volunteer about 20 years ago. That changed my life and changed the direction of my life. And that one thing led to another, and I kept studying. And then I eventually, was lucky enough to get a job working in the remote parts of South Australia, and sort of have done that on and off for the last 20 years or so. So very lucky.
So do you come and go from those parts of the country?
I'm more in town these days, so but the first sort of 12 years or so in that role, spending a fair bit of time in remote South Australia, in the far west of South Australia, and in that sort of volunteer experience as well across Australia as well. So, but definitely in town a little bit more often these days, and music keeps me there as well. So I have a nice balance that enables the flexibility for music as well.
Because you're certainly great at evoking a sense of space in your music. And not just place, but I say space on purpose because it's that mystical thing that can happen with instruments whereby you're evoking a feeling of being somewhere. And I think it's so mystical, it's hard to explain it or describe it for the person who's creating it.
Oh, that's really great to hear. Sometimes that's deliberate, and sometimes I think it's just comes out that way. So I think it has definitely influenced me. I still try and draw from that sort of in a deliberate way sometimes. And sometimes I assume it would be subconscious in the way that it comes out as well. So, but I'm also really conscious of reconnecting with country in the way that I can, as much as I, to not only keep my sanity and well-being, and what life's like. If you spend too much time in front of a computer or too much doing one thing, you go batty. So just trying to get that balance in life of spending plenty of time outside on the country and with my dog, but also writing music and work as well. So
Yeah. So you mentioned in town, I'm presuming you're in Adelaide. And if so, I'm wondering what the music scene's like in Adelaide after COVID. Has it popped back up again? Are you feeling it's invigorated?
Yeah, it's popped back really nicely, actually. So, and South Australia has some really fantastic country artists. You know, there's probably about half a dozen to a dozen well-known ones or ones that are emerging. And it's busy. It's getting busier. It's a little bit challenging from South Australia to get to the East Coast scene. So I have to be quite targeted when I do that. And unfortunately for my album, the East Coast was locked down, so I focused on South Australian touring, and but that certainly worked really well. And I think I was one of the few people touring last year when everything was locked down because South Australia was still open. So I was very fortunate to do that.
It was you, the Queenslanders, and Western Australia just had the run of it.
That's right.
So looking ahead, are you working on some new songs, or are you just thinking you'll have a breather after? Because it has been a tumultuous time, even when you've been in a state that's been relatively open.
Yeah, I had my downtime the first half of this year, so I was all due to go to Tamworth and have a couple of shows there. And Tamworth had, the plug pulled early on, things got busy in other parts of my life in the first half of the year, and I just didn't happen. Not a lot happened in the first half of the year, but looking back, I think that was really, really important. And had a couple of friends which pushed me to get out of South Australia in early July, and actually went and spent some time down with my friend Amber and Matt Fell, the producer. They've got a property down in Tassie, and helped them out there a little bit. And I started writing again, I've been creative ever since. So yeah, I'm writing music. I've been in the studio with my Adelaide band and recording some slightly different type of music. So not different type of music. It's just it's live in the studio, and it has a little bit more of a Neil Young, Crazy Horse type of vibe to it. So that's a lot of fun, and got the tracks back from that. And there's a couple there that are quite different, but I definitely will release. So it's inspired me to go back into the studio with them. I went back to Tassie recently to record a song with Matt, and that's a special project song about my hometown here. And I won't reveal it just yet. There's a specific part of my hometown, and that's going to be really exciting to release that next year. But I have to release it. We have to work out the date to release it because it's lined up with something here. So anyway, stay tuned. That's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really, really excited. And yeah, we will be recording another album too as well. So I might head back down there and help Matt out, and he can help me out. So.
Well, now I want to hear that song you're talking about, but obviously we'll have to wait. But in the meantime, you do have singles out, you have an album out, and people who are in Adelaide can catch you, no doubt. And hopefully you'll tour the East Coast at some point. And Matt Ward, it's been lovely to talk to you.
Thanks so much.